Welcome to Foresight, a podcast about HR, leadership, and the future of work. Last week, we aired part 1 of our conversation with Josh Bersin, and this week we'll be sharing part 2. If you haven't listened to part 1, definitely give it a listen before diving into this week's episode. Josh had so many great insights to share, and now we'll take you to part 2 of our conversation. On a more technical front, you emphasize that HR professionals will become citizen developers who need to learn and build and tune AI solutions as part of their day job, which is obviously a significant mind shift from buying software off the shelf, and also a skill set shift, right? We're talking about massive skill set shifts here. So how should HR leaders prepare themselves and their teams for these new roles, these new expectations?
Well, this is big. This goes back to my early days when I was at IBM a long, long time ago, when we used to build out our internal systems ourselves. The new tools like Galileo, well, most people know this. If you use ChatGPT or Gemini or Anthropic, you know you can generate a PowerPoint, you can generate a table, you can generate a document, you can generate code if you've played with it. And this is just getting better and better and better. So, if you wanted to build a new process for performance management and you wanted to force people to check in every 3 weeks and have 5 goals and summarize the goals once a month and send the goals to your manager and et cetera, you could wait for a software vendor to build that. You could twist the arm of your software vendor and try to get them to customize it to your needs. Or you could go to Claude in Galileo, or just go to Claude itself and describe what you want this code to do and press a button and it'll build the app. And I've done that, and it doesn't take more than 10 minutes. Right. Now, the app you built may not be perfect, but to give you, that's how easy it is to build an agent. So I think the days of waiting for your vendors to build you everything you need are over.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the vendors are going to go away, but many big companies are building a lot of their own stuff now.
Yeah. And to your point, I think we're also at a time where all these tools are built into the systems that we're already using day to day, right? So
yeah, and the big vendors are going to have to offer you tools within their platforms because they don't want you to leave their platforms. So, but I think this is essentially a revolution. That's why, I love the big software companies. I've worked with them forever, but their stocks are all really languishing because the financial market sees this new agent building world is massive. Mm-hmm. Microsoft makes more money on GitHub Copilot than they do on the other Copilots. Because the code generation just for software engineers is so massive. And, I have a good friend who's a senior guy at Anthropic, and their whole strategy is to optimize code generation because it's the code generation that'll generate the features they need in the Anthropic solutions. I literally, when I was building my prototype performance management app when I was on holiday over the holidays, I was futzing around with it. It took me about 20 minutes. It had a glitch. I took a screenshot of the glitch. I sent the screenshot back to Claude and I said, here's what happened. Would you fix it? It immediately goes, oh, I see what went wrong. Let me fix that. Boop.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's really amazing. I think part of what's standing in our way, not just HR, but people who are not techies, is this feel that you have to be techie. But like your example right there,
you don't have to be
so
techie.
not techie.
I'm not an engineer. I don't write code. I can write an Excel macro, maybe. This is using English or whatever language you speak. But you've got to know how these things work, and you have to kind of understand they're all emerging. But the tools are getting easier and easier and easier.
Yeah, they are getting easier. And to your point, you can ask the tool how it can best work for you, and it'll give you an
there's
answer.
People, the thing is, the HR profession is so big. There's techie type people who love doing this everywhere.
Yeah, totally.
So, you have people in HR that are more than willing to try this stuff out.
Yeah, I think the other frustration is not having access to the tools as much as they would like and not wanting to do the shadow AI thing, right? Like I think there are still many companies.
I think that's part of the architecture that's in our research is, the first part of the architecture is the company has to have some sort of an AI strategy with some sort of a platform for employees to get to.
Yeah.
The HR version of that is going to be more feeding the main one as opposed to being the main one, but that's coming along.
Yeah, yeah. But we know that agents are only as good as the data that's been given to train them. So the report warns that even 2% errors in HR policies can translate to 20 to 30% of employee queries being wrong, which would really be very detrimental in many of our organizations. So what governance structures and teams need to be in place before organizations can safely deploy AI agents at scale?
Well, let me mention the problem, and then I'll explain what I think the answer might be. In a typical database, non-AI, if there's a bunch of bad data in there, you're rarely going to see it. I mean, if you ran a report and the report was off by 2% because there's a whole bunch of faulty data, you're not 100% accurate, but at least you're close. In an AI system, because it's building these long embeddings, everything's essentially indexed to everything else. A polluted part of the corpus, some out-of-date data or incorrect data or inflammatory data or proprietary data, could be accessed by many, many, many queries. And you don't really know you don't know how many that may be. So you have to be extra, extra careful to not only keep these things accurate, but also label them. There's another domain, which I didn't really talk about a lot in the research, called data labeling, where you have to give the AI enough knowledge about what the data means so it can interpret it correctly. So all of that is jargon for the work that goes on in managing the corpus. We manage Galileo ourselves, and we don't have data scientists doing this. These are just good HR people that just know how to, kind of watch over things. I'd say what I've observed, and most of the companies that do this a lot, the company that was the most interesting was IBM. We had a long talk with IBM about how they do it, because they've been doing it for a long time. They have something like 6,000 talent and HR and recruiting policies in HR in IBM, because IBM does business in hundreds of countries. And of course, they're all in this giant Ask HR system. But at any given point in time, any one of them could be out of date or be superseded by another one. And so what the HR team did is they assigned owners of each of these policy groups. And those owners, and they're not technical people, they're probably HR managers, are responsible for regularly updating or maintaining or monitoring the quality of the data in their group. Then they found, now that we've got that under control, we have a bunch of people whose jobs it is to maintain this. Let's build an agent that goes through the legislative changes in all of the jurisdictions we do business in to alert these people who are responsible for this different corpus, segments of the corpus, when something changes, so they'll be aware that maybe our policies are out of date and maybe we should do something about them. So it's a little bit of a new infrastructure bunch of jobs, but think about the benefit of doing that. So maybe IBM has 50 people, 100 people, I don't know how many people doing this, but they're accessing a population of probably 600,000 or 700,000 people in IBM that are asking questions, and if they get the right answer, they're way more productive going back to work, doing whatever it is they're trying to do, than if they get the wrong answer. And if they call a call center, the call center agent's going to need to access this information anyway. So there's nothing but goodness here. So that's the sort of the big picture on where I think this is going. Now, IBM's been doing this for more than a decade, so they're very far down the learning curve. But that's basically what we do in our company. And I think we're all going to have to do that more and more on these different systems, including, by the way, the learning system, Naomi, because the learning platform, which used to be a bunch of courses, nobody could even keep track of what was in there and what was old and what was new.
Yeah.
That one's going to have to be taken care of too, because every question somebody asks of the learning platform is going to be dynamically generated from content that may be 20 years old.
Yeah, yeah. But it goes to show, I mean, this whole fear that human jobs are going away, they're just evolving, right?
There's a ton of new jobs.
None of this is like set it and forget it, as I say.
Well, in fact, I was thinking about this over the weekend because I wrote this big article about all this. I think the average pay and salary of HR people is going to go up. I think there's going to be so many new interesting jobs created. A lot of the routine ones will go away, but there's a lot of interesting things that need to happen here, and they're all in the interest of scale and value, not cost reduction.
Yeah. Yeah. So you described 4 stages of AI evolution. I love your maturity models always, from individual productivity tools to autonomous super agents. And most organizations, again, are still in stages 1 and 2. So what does it take organizationally and culturally to make the leap to stages 3 and 4, where AI really transforms entire workflows rather than just individual tasks?
Well, I'll give you a really specific example. And by the way, there are some vendors in recruiting. There are multi-process vendors like Paradox and Maki People and others that do multi-stage AI already. But the one that's probably most applicable to most companies is onboarding. So, if you think, and everybody does onboarding a little bit different. So, there's a whole bunch of steps: filling out your forms, getting your computer, getting your login ID, getting your card reader badge thing that lets you in the door, meeting the people in your group, getting trained on safety procedures, getting trained on other business processes, getting your first assignment, whatever else it may be. Everybody's got that list. It turns out that each one of those steps, and we have a chart on this that I went through in the webinar, each one of those steps has a system of some kind behind it that is keeping track of the data about you as a new employee. So you've got essentially a bunch of agents doing these individual steps. If they were developed in an AI model, there would be an owner for each of these steps, just like I was talking about at IBM, owning the policies. And that owner would be the one that made sure that this agent is working correctly and that it's up to date. But the person going through the onboarding process wants a process that goes horizontally across these agents. And so what companies are now doing, and we're working with 2 different companies doing this at the moment, is they're building super agents to stitch together. By the way, a lot of these are existing. All of this stuff already exists. There's already a system for giving you a computer, then a password and a badge and all that stuff. So you build a super agent that's the onboarding agent. You can use ServiceNow to do that. They have a tool set to do it. You can do it yourself, Workday or SAP. Actually, Galileo has a workflow tool that does this. There's others. And then you say, okay, well, I need a version of this for salespeople. I need a version for this for the US. I need a version of this for France. I need a version of this for India, customer service, et cetera. This super agent becomes more and more intelligent over time. And it starts to get smarter and smarter and smarter because once these agents are stitched together, the super agent can keep track of where the glitches are in the process or where people have been left out. I know that sounds sort of easy for me to say. This is a massive, by the way, if you notice, onboarding happens to be a category of HR software that's never taken off. I've talked to so many vendors that tried to build onboarding tools because they could never build something that was customizable to each company.
Right, yeah.
Well, this is a perfect example of something where you need to build something that's unique to you and you need to tweak whatever you have. So, there's that is an example. Another common example is in recruiting, and, all of these things we do in HR are multi-step processes.
Yes, absolutely. So back to the human intervention, you do need some human critical thinking, stitching together which individual processes need to be knit together for these certain situations.
Well, I'll give you, here's a mind-blowing one, Naomi, that I think really, really struck me, I don't know, a year ago when I was talking to this company. So in learning and development, we have this process in learning and development called needs analysis. And then we have this process in employee experience called engagement surveys. They're both actually sort of similar. You're trying to get people to tell you what their problems are and what they need help with. In one case, you do it through a survey. The other case, you do it through an interview. Well, what if you had an AI, and this is, I'm not talking about rocket science here. I'm just using common sense. What if you had an AI that reached out to a group of people, sent them an email and said, I would like your input and feedback on XYZ, so-and-so, whatever it may be, some process, some system, some glitch we're having. And it opened up a vocal dialogue and said, please tell me what are your opinions on this topic in words. No, don't fill out any forms. Don't type it. Just say it. And then it could do that for 1,000 employees at the same time. you could get information back on any problem you have, whether it's building a course or identifying a management issue or whether a benefit is working correctly within a few minutes.
Yeah, that's
Now, that's not rocket science. You can do that today.
Yeah.
So I think people just need to be creative in their thinking. Once they know how these AI tools work, a lot of the things we have kind of complicated systems to do, we don't need.
Yeah. No, that's so true. It's connecting dots in the similarities between processes.
I think, and it's open to imagination. I mean, I think you get the imagination by using the tools. Like, this is why I keep pitching Galileo. I mean, I'm not saying Galileo does everything, but it is so perfectly designed for HR that if you start using it, your mind is going to go, oh my God, I should be doing this. What about that? Let's try this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great, because a lot of what we do sits in two different silos that really should be way closer together and use very similar research methods or research tools.
Yeah, and I think, this is why the infrastructure is so important, and it's important to have IT people behind you so you have systems that people will use. But that's why I think it's the most interesting and revolutionary time in HR since I've been doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do present some examples of super agents in real companies.
We have tons of examples. I mean, Galileo is a super agent. The learning part of Galileo is definitely a super agent. So we can show it to you.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about either IBM's Ask HR or McDonald's McHire platform? And
they're both different. I mean, so let's talk about hiring, and then I'll talk about Ask HR. So in hiring in McDonald's, and a lot of this was built by Paradox, which is a multi-agent, really a super agent system that was acquired by Workday. But there's others. You can be driving through a McDonald's, picking up your Egg McMuffin, and it'll say, would you like a job to go with your sandwich? Because they're looking for people all the time. It's a high turnover kind of a situation in most McDonald's. And you can say yes, and you can talk through in voice what information you want to share, and it'll either interview you immediately or it'll schedule you for a regular interview if you want to go in and talk to somebody to keep the process flowing. Now, the benefit of that is obviously eliminating a whole bunch of back office stuff in HR, but that's not really the benefit. The benefit is they can grow the McDonald's business faster. And when there's turnover or high volume, in fact, there's now a new application just came out from UKG that can look at the labor market demand in a hospital or a restaurant or any other high volume business. And when it sees demand go up, it can open new job recs and find more candidates to join the company and fill those slots. Because sometimes for these hourly positions, we just need more people for the next couple of weeks.
Right.
So those are huge return on investment use cases. On the Ask HR thing, IBM's been doing many, many things over the years. I remember when IBM built an automated system for performance management, an automated system for pay. As I understand the way IBM works, and it may have changed, but it is so sophisticated now, the Ask HR system, that most managers in IBM don't have HR business partners at all. They're just not assigned. They're not expected to call HR at all for anything. And at the end of the year, when you have performance and pay discussions, the system recommends to you as a manager the performance and pay ranges of the people in your group based on data that it's collected from all sorts of performance information and across the whole company and the general budgets across IBM. So it really simplifies that process. And I think it's being used for, opening cases and inquiries and all sorts of things like that. So, and I think IBM's always a good example, but they've been working on this for 10 years. So, but they're way down the learning curve. Another client we know that has worked with IBM and also uses Watson Technologies, a healthcare provider, they have a network of hospitals in the Northwest, and they opened up a chatbot to all the nursing and clinical staff at least 4 or 5 years ago. And originally it was for simple stuff like what's my vacation balance and what is my shift next week, and how do I get a little more money out of the benefit program, whatever it may be. Now they're putting everything in there because everybody's so familiar with using it. So once this infrastructure starts, you have a sort of a big magnetic effect of putting more and more of your applications into this agentic experience for employees.
Yeah, and then I assume there's some sort of escalation process if someone's not happy with the budget that's been set for their team.
I'm sure in both cases you can click here to reach an agent.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, thank goodness. So the report warns against agent proliferation. So ending up with 100 agents from 100 different vendors, which sounds like a massive headache. So what should HR leaders prioritize when building their AI architecture strategy? And how do they avoid recreating the fragmented talent management tool problem that we saw in the 2000s?
Well, that's the reason we built this blueprint. So we have a blueprint that Galileo helped us build that shows you in PowerPoint what the 120 or 130 agent opportunities are. And most of them people will understand, but they will just not have thought about all of them. And then what we've done is we've cross-mapped them against each other to show you which ones are most likely to be dependent on which other ones. And we've built a super agent roadmap to show you the potential super agents that most companies would want to build. We're not trying to build software. We're just building basically research, but you can use that. We've now been sitting down with clients. In fact, we're going to New York in a couple of weeks with a bunch of companies to run it by them, so they can sort of look through it and say, okay, we want to work over there on that super agent. That's the one that I think will have the highest return on investment, or over here. And I think there's a planning process of thinking through from a business priority standpoint and sort of volume standpoint where you want to start. I mean, 10 years from now, we're going to have super agents and autonomous cars and autonomous this and, a lot of stuff will be there, but we have to build it step by step. And so that's the reason I mentioned the onboarding one, because it's easy to understand. But, the McHire application at McDonald's was built by them in partnership with Paradox. We're working with companies building agents for career development and learning and development and skills improvement. I talked about performance and needs analysis, and employee feedback is another super agent. Imagine the super agent that does employee feedback connecting to the leadership development super agent that's coaching your leaders.
Right.
Right? I mean, it's sort of obvious how these things are going to want to talk to each other.
Yeah, the McHire one really is very creative, right? Because that's really not just bringing together HR processes, but bringing together an HR and a customer process together.
Well, yeah, and the cool thing about this stuff is because it's so malleable, once you've started to build these things, they could be embedded into other applications. So like if you have onboarding of a contractor versus onboarding of a full-time employee, the onboarding agent could go, oh, you're a contractor. So as you fill out your contractor form, fill out this, this, and this, and this, and then it bypasses the first 17 steps and takes you to the 18th step and, gives you access to your badge, but doesn't send you a computer.
Right. Right. Which, if a human was doing that process, there would be a lot of room for human error in that process.
Yeah.
So really, really fascinating. So, we've talked a lot about the HR function and implications for HR. I mean, if you are listening and you are in HR, I don't blame you if you feel somewhat overwhelmed by this conversation. But what are top CHROs you meet doing to balance keeping up with all of this transformational change while simultaneously being very realistic about what needs to happen in their day jobs?
I think there's a ton of things to do, but I think there's two big main important things. The first is you have to get familiar with what the technology is capable of. Use Galileo, use another tool. I call it getting your hands dirty. Try some things. It'll blow your mind. In most cases, you'll be astounded that it's much, much more capable than you thought it was. The second is prioritize. You're going to have to get a team of people in the HR department to look across all the activities going on, think about the 5 things I mentioned earlier, and there could be others, and decide where you want to focus first. And then decide in the vendor market, what do you want to buy versus build? The problem of 100 agents is hopefully not going to happen if you take some time and think about the focus areas and the super agent opportunities you have. Because if you look at the independent vendors, every one of them is fascinating. I mean, vendors for creating job descriptions, finding people to source for different jobs, doing assessments, skills assessments with AI. I mean, on and on. There's hundreds and hundreds of them. And nobody wants to have 100 vendors in their HR department. So that's number one and number two. And then number three is working with IT, whoever that may be, to make sure that once you have a roadmap, you know what they're already buying, and you can buy or build something that leverages the infrastructure that they've already built. If they're a big Microsoft Copilot shop, fine, you're going to build in that environment. If it's another platform, if it's ServiceNow, if it's Workday or whatever, that's a debate you're going to have with IT. They're having that same debate with everybody else in the company.
Yeah.
So you're not, but you're going to be a high priority for them because they know that the HR related questions and issues are fundamental to every employee. So you're going to be a high priority regardless of how, much help you've gotten from IT in the past. I think those three things are going to get you off the ground. And then we're going to, you can always call us or get Galileo to access what we're doing. We're writing case studies and examples and talking to companies all the time. So we have lots and lots of stories on how different companies are doing it. And obviously our conference is in June. We're going to have some amazing stories there. This is happening all over the place. It's happening in all different sizes of companies.
Yeah. And I think that the main message is keeping those conversations open and keeping those conversations fluid, right? It's not enough to go have a chat with your IT department once a year or even once a month, right? Like really having those. You're
going to be partnering with IT. No. This is why the linkage between HR and IT is getting so strong. Is you're not just going to be buying something. You're going to be building something. Even if you're buying something, you're also building something.
Yeah, it's no longer the process of like put in your business recs and then come back and do the tech specs and come back, right? It's a much more fluid conversation. And we're not going to get it perfect all the time. And we have to be okay with that too. Thank you so much for spending time with us again on our podcast today, Josh. Before you go, can you tell the listeners how they can learn more about the great work you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty easy to find. JoshBersin.com is the main website. GetGalileo.ai. I'll teach you all about Galileo. And if you get Galileo, you get basically all of our research, all of our IP, and all sorts of other HR-related data, salary benchmarking, jobs, skills, roles, all sorts of things that we've collected from other partners. I go to most of the trade shows, so I'm traveling a lot, and we're a very collaborative company. We really thrive on helping HR organizations improve and transform and solve problems. So we don't mind having conversations and talking to people. So we're pretty easy to get hold of.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And as you know, we like to end on a high note, otherwise known as a feel good. So what are you feeling good about today?
I'm feeling good about the sun and the fresh air and a really, hopefully, positive world ahead, despite all of the terrible things going on in the political environment. I'm hoping that everybody is not dealing with that in their daily life. Turn off the TV, work with your teams, and experiment with some of these new tools because it's really going to make our businesses and our careers so much more exciting more than ever before.
Great. Hear, hear. And that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much for being our first guest on our podcast 3 times. And it's always so great to connect with you, and hopefully we'll see you soon.